With all you have seen, do you see that there's a correlation between ethnicity and police shootings?
Yeah, I would say to some degree, but the reasons I say that aren't popular. I would say that the average officer isn't going out there trying to gun down Black folks. I mean, let's just look at it from a numbers perspective. According to the Labor Division and various other agencies, the estimates put it at somewhere between 500,000 to nearly 2 million police officers in this country. And there have been studies that have been done over the years that estimate that the police can make anywhere from 100 million, I've seen, to nearly 400 million. Someone estimated around 375 million interactions, contacts with the public every single year. We're talking car stops, we're talking self-initiated activities by the officers, we're talking calls for service, we're talking when the citizen stops the officer. So you're looking at anywhere up to nearly 400 million contacts every single year conducted by law enforcement. I always say if cops were seeking to hunt down Black folks, Black men in particularly, they're doing a poor job at it. With that number of citizens, that number of officers making that many contacts, I think that it would be very clear if police were actually seeking to exterminate, as I've heard some BLM supporters say, seeking to exterminate the Black man. I think it's insane, especially once again, when you examine the numbers. Last year in 2020, there were 15 unarmed Black men who were shot and killed by the police. The year before that, I think the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 14. Just think about it. Cops making all those interactions, arresting over 10 million people every single year, and 15 unarmed Black men got shot and killed by the police. And then and another thing I'd like to add on to that is, let's not assume that unarmed means that you cannot be dangerous. Mm-hmm. Every year, if you look at the sources, whether it's via the FBI or the CDC, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 3,000 people are killed where there's no weapon involved, where it's just the suspect's bare hands takes that person's life. If either one of you were a cop and you were on a call and I was the guy you needed to stop, little do you know that I just ran a red light, but little do you know that I'm an ex-felon who has a gun under the seat of my car. I'm on probation, and I was told by my probation officer that, Eric, if you get stopped again doing something illegal, you're never getting out, or you're looking, because my criminal rap sheet is a mile long. And let's just say when you stop me, I'm committed to not going to prison. Now, I don't want to sit up here and make any assumptions, but I'm pretty sure that I could be pretty dangerous if I wanted to be, especially if there's a size difference, a height difference, a physical strength difference, a skill set difference. So when we hear the term unarmed, a lot of times we're automatically alarmed. We just don't understand how an officer could be justified in doing that. But we also have to understand that every year, somewhere in the neighborhood of 58,000 officers are assaulted each and every year. So I just try to paint a big picture. I just really want people to understand that when it comes down to the issue of police shootings, and we typically go to the concept, the term of unarmed shootings, that we need to really understand exactly what's going on. Let's find out what the details are. But as far as the police seeking just to hunt down the Black man and just to eliminate him, I think that is absolutely absurd. And I think that there's no substantial facts to support that claim.
How do those statistics compare of the 15 unarmed Black men who were shot in 2020? How does that compare with, do you have any numbers on other ethnicities?
That was going to be my question. How many other people are actually being killed? Is it proportionate?
Because when I think of the numbers of 375 million interactions, 10 million arrests, 15 shootings of unarmed Black men, I'm just wondering, I wonder how that compares to other ethnicities.
So in 2019, there were 25 unarmed white men that were shot by the police. And as far as Black men, when I gathered this information, there were 14 unarmed Black men.
Okay.
And in 2018, it was 25 white, 23 Black. In 2017, there were 31 white, 22 Black. In 2016, there were 22 white and 19 Black. So typically what follows after that, which is a natural question, is most people will say, well, we as Black folks only make up around 20% of the population.
Why? The ratio question.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And it's a sensible and it's a reasonable question to ask. And this is when you start getting into the tougher parts, the parts that a lot of people really struggle with. But I go by the data to the best of my ability. And I don't try to discount people's feelings and how they feel about some of these issues because they're very sensitive. And I know they stir a lot of emotion, and I respect that and I understand that. But we also have to look at the hard data. So throughout the course of over the years, this has been consistent over, I would say, probably at least the last 7 or 8 years, that Black men, a small percentage, a very small percentage, and I want to make that abundantly clear. There's a small percentage of Black folks, Black males in particularly, who are responsible for over 50% of the homicides each and every year. Over approximately 50% of all robberies, and typically more than 40% of all violent crimes. This is according to the FBI Uniform Crime Report. Anyone here I would encourage anyone listening to me to double check the statistics that I'm sharing with you. The information is there. So if you're dealing with that, if you're dealing with a small percentage of our population, of our society, I said 20%. I think it's even less. I said 20%. I think it's less than that, if I'm not mistaken.
I've heard 13%,
well,
maybe.
13%, yes.
Yeah.
12, 13%.
Yeah.
So if you look at Black males, that's only 6% of the population.
Right.
And there's an even smaller percentage of that who's out there actually committing the crime. I mean, we're probably talking about less than 1%. Clearly, we're talking about less than 1% of the population who is responsible for these evil deeds. So when you're dealing with a group of people who commit that much crime, by nature, you will typically put yourself in the crosshairs, for lack of a better term, I should say, or interacting with the police. It's just naturally. And so I would say that when you look at the numbers and you see what would look to be the disproportionate amount of shootings, the times when Blacks, in particularly Black males, are the victims for a lack of a better word, in a police shooting, we have to look at everything. We can't just look at, we only make up 6% of the population, but there's a disproportionate number of times where the police shoot and kill us. Therefore, it must be because of racism. I think that's an unfair assumption to make, and I don't think the data supports that.
I think that's a lot of what we've been talking about, like behind the scenes too. It's like, you have to look at all of the data, you have to look at all of the factors, how many or what percentage of people are participating in crimes, are participating in violent crimes, especially, and how often does that lead to officer interaction? Not even just like violent officer interaction, but, just how often is an officer called? So I think there's a lot to be said there.